Sanbonani, good evening, Dumelang, and welcome to episode 176 of the Private Property Podcast. I'm your host, Zama. We're getting so close to to episode 200. I think it's actually probably time for the team to start cooking up a great giveaway, something big for episode 200. I'm sure a lot of you probably have a few ideas of what you would like us to do. You've seen what we've done for some of our big episodes, your episode 50, 100, and 150. If there's a certain thing that you would like us to do for episode 200, then do drop us a suggestion down here below, and we'll certainly look into it. And of course, talking about giving away certain things, you know that we're running our competition, which is questions for the champions that we're running right here on the Private Property Podcast. And this is a competition that's very easy to enter. All we're asking you is to make sure that you put together a team of 4 of your friends and family and form a team of 5. Give yourselves a very unique name. Then make sure that you hop onto the live every single weekday for the Private Property Podcast. And when you're obviously on the live, make your team name known. Let us know that you are live, that you're watching with us, and then wait until the end of the episode where we're going to be asking 5 questions. And the team that gets the 5 correct the quickest walks away with 1,500 Rand. It's that easy to win. So do make sure that you get your friends and family together and tune into the Private Property Podcast. And talking of shows that you can tune into, I never ever come alone. We always, of course, have other shows that you can tune into. And just this evening, you can tune into the First Time Home Buyers show with Estee. She will be coming up at 7:45. And this evening, she's going to be talking to somebody who needs no introduction to your screens, Uslindile Sleane. Of course, we've had her on the Private Property Podcast on a number of occasions, and she is a property stockfile coach, and they'll be looking at steps to achieve home ownership through a property stockfile. So if you are exploring a property stockfile and you'd like to make sure that you get the ins and outs of how to go about doing so, especially if it's your first property, then do make sure that you tune into the First Time Home Buyers show this evening at 7:45. Another show that we're very excited about, and I love this one because I also have agricultural ambitions that I'm still kind of playing around with, is the Farming Podcast. And the Farming Podcast comes to your screen every Tuesdays and Thursdays at 1 p.m. Umbali Noko, who's a farmer herself, brings you that edition of the great Farming Podcast. So if you ever have any agricultural ambitions and you still want to just get a better sense of where to best position yourself, what to do, what not to do, then do make sure that you tune into that show. Over the weekend, Chad takes you through some of the best estates that this country has on offer with the Developer Show. So do make sure that you tune into that one. It's every Saturday and Sunday, also at 1 o'clock. So we certainly have quite a lot on the menu across the Private Property social media platforms. So do make sure that you're following us. Might be watching us on Facebook, perhaps you're watching us on YouTube. If you aren't watching us if you aren't following us on the other platforms, then do make sure that you also hit us up on Twitter, of course, YouTube, even LinkedIn for all of your property needs. And talking of social media, you can also follow myself on @Zamantungwa_K. Now, this evening, I'm quite excited to talk about this one because it's, again, we're bringing all the people who don't need much introduction. Some of the great guests and experts that we've had throughout the year. We have, of course, had over 170 episodes. So we're bringing them back as we close off the year in property. And this evening, we're looking at estate agents, why you need them, and how to ensure that you've got the right one on board. And my guest this evening is Nthato Raboshaga, who is the founder of Nthato Realty. Nthato, good evening, and thank you so much for joining us.
Good evening, Zama. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you very much, Nthato, for making time. I know it's December and, some people want to go on a break, but I think as both you and I know, unfortunately, property doesn't quite go on a break. In as much as we try to automate certain things, there's still instances where we still need to have our fingers on the pulse and make sure that we do things ourselves. And I think one of the things that, I know viewers at home are potentially trying to be doing right now is you either have people who are looking at, selling their property during this period, and for a whole host of different reasons. I think perhaps on the one hand, you might be looking at, having more cash flow. certainly for yourself. You might be looking at letting go of a few properties because maybe there are other deals that you want to get into, and some of your other properties are not going to allow you to be able to get into them because you are overexposed. Some people are going to want to buy new property, and they have to, of course, work with an estate agent when they see the listing, and you want to find different ways of sussing out whether the estate agent is legit or not. And really, that's probably maybe one of the starting points that we should look at is what exactly then is the role that the estate agent essentially plays. Because as I was saying, there's so many different things that you can be doing. You can be buying, you can be selling, and an estate agent often plays such an integral part of that process. So if in many ways, what exactly is the estate agent doing and the role that they're playing during these transactions?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, thanks for that. I guess for me, the easiest definition that I have of an estate agent is a shock and stress absorber. Basically, an estate agent is the link between the seller and the buyer, and also the link between a tenant and a landlord. So all the complaints, all the issues, literally they come to you, and you are responsible for ensuring that all parties are happy. So depending on what role that they have to play, if you're a seller, then you'd have to bring in someone who works within the real estate industry, and they will help you to, one, market your property, two, help you sell it, and then also give you an after service experience, because we understand that once you've sold your property, then you need to cancel a few things. Your rates account may still be open, it must be closed, and the buyer must also open the new one. Then we're looking at your levy account may be open, it needs to be closed. So that's the different roles that an estate agent plays. So basically, you are like a wedding planner, but for houses.
Yeah, I actually love that, the shock and stress absorber. But I think, Nthato, one of the things that you and I both know is that, and I'm sure there are viewers at home who are thinking, okay, I hear that and I fully agree. But we've also seen instances where, unfortunately, the estate agent is the one who's bringing you the stress. So they're not making the process better, and stress-free for you, and making sure that they're guiding you and making you understand things along the way. And I want us to talk a little bit later on about, how do you then handle that in the event where you're working with an estate agent and they could either be managing one of your properties, maybe selling one of your properties. How do you then, manage conflict or misunderstanding? But I think before we even get there, let's then look at how do we tell legit estate agents from those who are potential scammers. Because one of the things that I've also seen, especially during this period, is a lot of people have gone into real estate and have particularly gone into being real estate agents. We know that becoming a real estate agent is not particularly difficult. And I mean, we are talking of people who are still going to be getting their hours before they write their exam. So certainly getting that first foot in, the barrier of entry isn't that high. I think it's only, when you look at probably the levels where it gets slightly more difficult. But then how do we tell estate agents who are legit and those who aren't, especially when we know that it isn't that difficult to essentially get a foot in?
Yeah. That's a good one, because I've also seen on a number of advertisements and also looking at the complaints on social media where there was a lady who was taking pictures of houses that are being sold, and then she would take those pictures and send them to potential clients and say they are for rental. Then she takes people's deposits and runs away with it. It's easy for one to even dupe people, because immediately anyone can post on Facebook and say, I'm an estate agent, this is a house that I'm dealing with, and people just blindly follow that and they believe them. However, what you don't know is if Nthato Raboshaga claims to be an estate agent, you can go on the Estate Agents Affairs Board and you put in his name on the website and check him as an agent. And it will show that there is Nthato Raboshaga who's registered as an estate agent. But most importantly, anyone who claims to be an estate agent should have an FFC, a Fidelity Fund Certificate number. So when you have that, anyone who is coming to you and wanting to give you services in property should present you with the latest FFC. So for 2020, I will get an FFC certificate with a certain number. Next year, I need to apply for a new one. So every year, one needs to have an FFC certificate with their name, their IDs, and their FFC number, and importantly, the date. So if you do not have an FFC certificate, you are not an estate agent as per the laws of South Africa. So the easiest way to check it is to just say, present me with your FFC. They should easily present you with that because the law requires it.
Mm-hmm. And I know that so many viewers at home probably didn't know that one, because as we're saying, we see a lot of real estate agents, especially using social media to get clients. And a lot of them, are legit estate agents. And of course, they should be using social media in order to market the various properties that they have on stock. And unfortunately, you do have other people who are scamming, a lot of people. I think the example that you made of, somebody taking pictures of houses that are on sale and like running away with the deposit. I've seen that scam happen so many times. I think we even see it quite a lot in the beginning of the year when it's student accommodation places and parents start getting, desperate. They have all the right pictures, sometimes even the right, videos, and they'll send it to you and they'll say, it's very urgent, it's very close to the university. And of course, the parents are going to pay the deposit because they want to make sure their child stays as close as possible to the university. But then you find out, you move from whichever province you're coming from. And when you come to the place, it wasn't, a legit agent that you're working with. So it does make it quite difficult. So I think to viewers at home, do take that tip that Nthato has given. Ask them, if they are, check rather, even if they are registered with the Estate Agency Affairs Board, because that does help you in establishing whether you're working with a legit estate agent or not, because there's recourse in the event where they are legit. And we'll get to that later on in the show with Nthato. But Nthato, one of the other things that we both know is that some people are looking at probably doing it themselves. I think we're seeing a lot of DIY things when it comes to property, whether it's, landlords wanting to manage their own properties, or certainly sellers who think, look, I don't really want to pay the commission, so I'll just sell the property myself. I'm not going to use an estate agent. So why should we be working with an estate agent? Especially because we've seen people thinking, I'll just go on YouTube, I'll quickly figure out what I need to do, then I'll quickly do it. So what value does working with an estate agent then give us when we work with them?
Yeah, I would say that if it's your first property, definitely get an estate agent. But then when it comes to your second, third, fifth, or fourth, when you then get to understand how things work, it gets very much easier for one to market and also run their own properties as a landlord. It also allows one to grow as a person because you're going to have first-hand experience of how abusive the tenants are to the agent. So you'll get an appreciation of the whole thing. For those who are like first-time homeowners, home buyers, or you've just bought your property and you want to list it out, what you can know is that when you get an estate agent, first they will know the legal matters. When it comes to that, they will draft your offer to purchase, they will draft your lease agreement, and it will have the right and relevant legal jargon and everything that you need in there in case of a dispute. Because if you could just take a lease agreement from the internet. I've seen this happening. Someone take a lease agreement from the internet and it's a proper one. The only problem is that it's an American lease agreement. What that means is those laws do not apply in South Africa. And you have Fifth Amendments written in there that we do not even have such. So make sure that you, if you want to do it your way, you get those things done the right way. However, that's one of the things that an estate agent will help you with. They also know a lot about the selling and financing techniques. With selling, they will have a way to market your property. Times are changing now. We are using social media, the social media boosting. It costs money to put your property on private property and other websites. It's expensive. And those are the costs that are incurred by the agent, not you. And also we're looking at, when you're looking into financing aspect of your property, you want to buy a property, you're not even sure how you're going to finance it. There are different ways that one can finance. You can either go to the bank. There's also a deal where you can do and take a bond from the seller. Some people don't even know this. The seller can give you a bond and you pay them every month until you finish paying off that property. So those are some of the things that an estate agent will help you with. Also, they're familiar with the local market. They understand which street is dangerous. Don't go there. Find the one next to the school, or the schools are very bad in this area. Instead of extension 2, go to extension 12, or Bryanston is going down. No, don't move to Bryanston, rather stick to the other parts, go to Four Ways and the other areas. So there's a lot that an estate agent can help you with. Also, but very, very importantly, the valuation of your property.
Yeah.
Most sellers think their houses are actually worth way more than the house is worth, simply because it's your house, it's your baby, you love it. Chances are you
about it. You also just think of all the money you've put in, all the memories, and you think, look, this house should be selling for 2 million, whereas it's probably like what, a 1.1 at most.
Exactly. So if you have an estate agent by your side, the first thing that they need to do is to give you a CMA, current market analysis. This shows you the value of your property on the market currently. It is not the intrinsic value of your property, and there's a very big difference between that. The intrinsic value is the value at which the insurance values your property. So if your house were to burn today and it had to be rebuilt from scratch, what amount is required to rebuild your house to the exact specs that it was before? That's the intrinsic value of your property. However, a CMA shows you what your property is worth in the market currently. So the intrinsic value of your property may be 2 million, but the market is bad and people are selling around you and the community is going down, and you find that your house is actually worth 1.5 million on the market. So if you do not know that, you will just take that valuation, or the biggest mistake one can make is to take municipal valuation. Those ones are always off. Like you'd find a seller saying, yeah.
They're undervaluated, or they've completely overvaluated. And I think if in the event where they've overvaluated, obviously the seller is going to like that, because they're going to want to use that as, this is how much it is, this is what the municipal evaluation is. And then when it's obviously undervaluated, then you're not going to want to present that, because you'll think, look, the municipality is off, so maybe rather not use that.
Yeah, definitely. So most people would not know the difference between each type of valuation. So they'll just come and say, municipality said my house is 5 million, I want 5 million. You will not get that 5 million. All they are doing is because they want to increase your property taxes. You will pay more on rates and taxes.
As we just say, I was just like, I wonder then how much are rates and taxes. I mean, if really it is valued at 5 million, what's the square meter of the property, and how much rates and taxes are we paying? Because that's also the question that you should probably ask if somebody wants to drive home the municipal evaluation, that you actually want to see how much they're paying COJ, because that's also something that can be quite a shocker. I mean, Nthato, in my area, I remember looking at it was actually, it's a nice mansion. It's not that big. I think it's on a 2,500 square meter yard. And the rates that they were paying the municipality were something like 3.5, right? So 3,500 rands. And you're thinking, that's rates and taxes? Now imagine all the other associated costs. And that's a freestanding, it's not in any municipal, it's not in a gated community. So maybe if it was in a gated community, you think, okay, it's a levy, you know that there are all these other services. There are no services. You must do your own security, you must do your own gardening, you must do everything yourself, but you're paying COJ, you know, nearly 4,000 rand. So you really do want to ask, in the event where they will argue the municipalities valued it as high, then ask them how much they're paying for rates and taxes, because chances are you may not have budgeted for that amount. And that's one of the things that you always want to budget for when you then look at the running cost of that property. Nthato, I want us to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll also then explore what happens if you have a fallout with your estate agent, or there's some conflict with your estate agent, because we know that these are some of the things that could potentially happen. And we also want to find out, where can people go to get good estate agents? Because I think the reality is, if you're a seller, you've probably you've barely engaged with a lot of estate agents. Maybe the last estate agent that you engaged with was the one that you bought the property from, which may have been many moons ago. And now you're looking at selling your property, and maybe you just don't know where to go before you can find that good estate agent that's going to give you the TLC that you need, and also, of course, a professional service so that you can sell your property as quickly as possible. We're going to go for a quick break, and we'll also be hearing from Estee just in a bit.
Everyone, as you know, I'm here to announce this evening's estate agent winner. You too could win 1,500 Rand cash. You know what to do. Send us your highlights of 2020 and tell us how you managed to remain on top of your game. This evening's winner is all the way from the Free State, Bloemfontein. It is Shanice Chanel Swartz, and she says, wow, where do I start? I am so blessed. I started working for Pam Golding Properties Bloemfontein on the 3rd of March. Few weeks of settling in, lockdown happened. I honestly don't know how I managed to get up every morning with the courage and motivation to get up and carry on. All I can say is the best highlights of 2020 is as an intern estate agent. This had really strengthened my faith in believing that no COVID is too big for my God. My first week since we could go back to the office, I sold my first house. The next week, I sold my second house. And the third week, I sold my third house. And I knew that was God. So I'm truly blessed for this grateful year. And my message to all estate agents is 2020 has been tough on us all. But don't curse a year that showed you your blind spot. Happy selling, everyone, and that is from Shanice Chanel Swartz. You too could be our next lucky winner. Don't forget, send in those comments and let us know what was your highlight of 2020 and how did you manage to stay on top of your game. Back over to you, Zama.
Welcome back to the Thursday edition of the, is it Thursday? It's the Wednesday edition of the Private Property Podcast. And I'm your host, Zama. Nthato and I are having the time of our lives off air. And of course, we love extending some of the conversations that we have slightly off air and bring them on air. And one of the things that I think it is of particular interest, and we've been talking about it before the break, is of course, what then happens in the event where you have conflict with an estate agent, but also where do you go in the event where you have, where you're looking for a good estate agent. And that's some of what we're going to be exploring from you at home. I want to certainly hear your experience with estate agents. Perhaps let's look at some of the horror stories, because I think sometimes the good stories are great because you end up getting your property, whether you're buying it or you're selling it, and they've treated you really well. What have been some of the horror stories, and what were the potential red flags that you probably missed? And now when you kind of retrospectively think about them, you're like, this was a red flag, this was a red flag. Because I think it would be always great to see what other people missed in order for us to be able to learn from each other. So Nthato, I mean, I did say before the break, I wanted us to explore conflict, because unfortunately, as much as oftentimes, maybe 9 out of 10 times, things will go well, you're always going to have a good relationship with somebody, that one time can cause so much havoc and certainly cost you, money sometimes. So how do we then go about dealing with instances where, there's conflict with your estate agent?
Yeah. Talking of horror stories, when I bought my first property, the first and only time I saw the agent was the day I signed. And after my property was registered, she took the keys and threw them inside the house via the window. And She told me the door is open, just go to the property and you'll find them there. And indeed, I did find my keys there, and she wasn't there. So also, there's another horror story where a friend of mine was buying a property. And remember, there are what we call suspensive conditions in an offer to purchase agreement. One of the suspensive conditions is that one should get a bond. So if you're applying for a bond, a home loan, it says you need to receive a home loan for this offer to purchase to shift from being an offer to become a binding contract. But what most people don't understand, and a lot of estate agents are taking advantage of people, is that just merely getting a quotation from the bank saying, Zama, we are giving you 5% or we are giving you 4%. If you do not accept those quotations, you have not received a bond. Therefore, there is no binding contract. But most estate agents, actually, let me say not most, some who are corrupt will then tell you that, listen, you got a bond, there's a contract, I want my money, I want my commission. So you look into such things. And then also, there are some offer to purchase agreements where other estate agents will put in that if you do not apply for a bond within 30 days, you then give me proxy as the estate agent to go to the bank on your behalf and apply for a bond. So once you sign there, remember that an offer to purchase, that OTP is under common law, which means that whatever you've put in there, as long as it's not illegal, you are bound by it. So look into such things. Those are the red flags that people could look into. But once there's a conflict, the best way would be talk about it, first approach. It doesn't work all the time because some people don't want to be wrong. And estate agents are human, and then you're also a human. If it does not work out, then you then take them to the estate agency affairs board. They will deal with them proper, even. Like they make sure when it comes to complaints, they make sure, and you will get your recourse. So that's a body that ensures that estate agents actually conduct themselves in a professional manner. And if it happens that what they're doing has been very wrong, they can even lose their license, the FFC that I mentioned earlier. And losing your FFC simply means by South African law, you are not allowed to get paid a commission for a transaction which you have done. So if I sell a house and I've lost my license, you can't just pay me. You refuse to pay me at the end of the transaction. And I can't even take you anywhere because I am not allowed to be selling houses. I do not have a valid FFC certificate. So that's one of the avenues that can be followed. But at first, you can try to fix things up. If you're dealing with an agent, you can take it to their principal agent if they're working for an agency. That is the big boss at the agent. And most of them are about their money. So if things aren't going the right way, they will definitely find you a recourse. But if all else fails, estate agency affairs board, and they will make sure. It's like they were born for that.
I love that. And we've got a comment here coming in from Carolyn, message on Facebook saying qualified and experienced estate agents are crucial to ensure sellers and buyers are sufficiently protected through the transaction process. And that is something, you know, that Nthato did note earlier. Nthato, and before I let you go, then where do we go to find good estate agents, especially to people who are either looking to rent out their home or looking to sell? Because it might be the first time that you're doing that. Because I think oftentimes when you are buying, the estate agent is already there, you are going to be viewing with them. So you're not looking for a new estate agent. But where do we then go if you're looking at selling your property or looking at renting it out? How do we go about finding a good estate agent?
Yeah, I think from our experience, word of mouth remains the best way to find a good estate agent. At least one person that you know that has bought a property or that is renting it out or that is renting somewhere, get their experience with the person. And if all else works very well and all checks, then you can use that estate agent, because from then it may be a bit of a downhill, because you're going to go on a website and you see a house being rented out. You're just going to deal with that person. You don't know them. You don't know how they conduct their business. You don't know the information or background. But what I can say is, if all else fails, Nthato Realty is here. Hit us up.
And that's a great note to leave it on. I've worked with Nthato, so you certainly can reach out to him. I think we've also shared their details down here below. So whether you're looking at selling, buying, or renting out your property, then that is a service that they provide. Nthato, we're going to leave it there this evening. Thank you so much for joining us. And also thank you for indulging us every time we ask you to be on the Private Property Podcast. We do hope that yourself, your family, and the rest of your team are going to have a great Christmas and a new year. And we'll definitely be touching base with you in the new year because property never sleeps, and we're always going to have property matters that we want to discuss. So thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
And we're going to go for a quick break, and when we come back, it is going to be questions for the champions. Of course, that is the competition that we're running across our social media platforms, but especially on the Private Property Podcast. That is, of course, a competition that I'll be telling you a little bit more of just after this. Welcome back to the Private Property Podcast. I'm your host, Zama Khumalo, and it is that time in the evening where we're doing questions for the champions. And of course, this is the competition that we're running on the Private Property Podcast, where you stand a chance of walking away with 1,500 Rand for you and your team. And all you have to do is form a team of 5 with 4 of your friends and family, and give yourselves a unique name. Make sure that you hop on the live at 7 o'clock when we start. Make your presence known. We want to see that you're here, you're watching. And then, of course, wait until the end of the podcast where we ask you 5 questions. This evening is going to be 5 statements, true or false. And the first team that answers them correctly walks away with 1,500 Rand. It's that simple to walk away with money. I'm sure a lot of people probably want that extra buck, those extra rands in their pockets. It's the festive season. It's always great to win money. And the big thing is the questions are always based on the previous day's conversation. So if you're watching this evening with your team, then tomorrow hop on the live, because we're going to be asking questions based on today's episode. So it is that simple. We make sure we keep the questions as simple as possible, because it's not an exam. We want you to win the money. We want to give away this money. And we really are doing as much as we can to keep it simple, so you're able to walk away with the money. And the first statement for this evening's questions for the champions is, and this is, of course, based on the conversation I had with Zelinda van der Merwe yesterday on community schemes. And the statement is, a community scheme is an arrangement where there's a shared use of and responsibility for parts of land and buildings, true or false. So that's true or false. A community scheme is an arrangement where there is a shared use of and responsibility for parts of land and buildings, true or false. And that's a simple one. And we've spoken about community schemes so many times that I know that that's going to be an easy one to answer. The second statement is, in a community scheme, the body corporate may do all the things reasonably necessary for the enforcement of the rules and for the management and administration of the common property. True or false? I'm going to repeat that one. True or false? In a community scheme, the body corporate may do all the things reasonably necessary for the enforcement of the rules and for the management and administration of the common property. True or false? And the third statement, again, it's another true or false statement, is the rules you implement do not have to comply with the Constitution if supported by the Sectional Title Scheme Management Act. I'm going to repeat that one, true or false. The rules you implement do not have to comply with the Constitution if supported by the Sectional Title Scheme Management. And that is the third statement. The fourth statement, another true or false, is a tenant does not have the right to exclusive use of the common area allocated to a section. True or false? I'm going to repeat it. True or false? A tenant does not have the right to exclusive use of the common area allocated to a section. And the last statement, another one is a true or false statement, is the body corporate is the collective name given to all the owners of units in a scheme. I'm going to repeat that, true or false. The body corporate is a collective name given to all the owners of units in a scheme. And those are the 5 statements this evening. We've kept it again, true or false. You want to make sure that you answer as quickly as possible. We have also posted them down here below. So if there's one that you missed, then do look down here. Remember, when you answer the questions, use the name of your team so we're able to track which team is answering the questions. Well, it's that easy to walk away with cash right here on Private Property and on the Private Property podcast. And we're going to certainly keep this competition until next week. So do make sure that you get that team together and you tune in so you can walk away with that cash prize. Well, that's it from me, Zama Khumalo, and the rest of the Private Property podcast team. I'll now be handing over to Estee for the first time home buyers show. As usual, hoping you're staying home and staying safe.